Hey everyone, it's Krieg here. I just thought I'd make a different kind of video, different from the ones I made before when it's been about, gameplay and funny clips and that kind of thing. And so this time I thought I'd make a different kind of video discussing a problem in Enlisted and my potential solution. For those who don't know much about me, I used to be a Heroes and Generals player on PC for a long time in, I think, 2019. I loved that game so much. I think it has a really interesting mode which Enlisted would benefit from. I'd just like to discuss that with you. Starting with the key problem amongst all the problems Enlisted has, which I know it has many, the key problem I feel is that Enlisted has genuinely no rewarding late or end game content. I personally feel this when now you see all the gameplay upload is basically Germany Battle Rating 5. I pretty much record it because I enjoy the gameplay, but to me a big part of Enlisted is the grind. You play Enlisted because you want to aspire to unlock the next weapon, you want to get the silver, you want to grind for the event. And so I feel fundamentally there's a lack of meaning in the game towards like genuinely what is the point in the grind. Once the grind is over, if there is nothing left to grind for, say for example you are a player who's put over 1,000 hours into the game and you've got everything, you've got all the event weapons you want, you've got all the squads you need, you've got everything you could ever desire, why play? And I sometimes question myself why I play when I've completed Germany, my favourite tech tree. I found it a really interesting grind, fundamentally fascinating, moving from battle rating 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, and having all these different squads. You've even seen me upload BR2 gameplay because I love BR2 so much. So fundamentally now I've completed the tech tree. What is the point? Even at BR2 I could unlock things by moving across, and so Heroes and Generals had the exact problem, but because you had this wider real-time strategy mode, which I will come to discuss now basically, despite the fact that I unlocked everything in the game, I had something bigger that I was working towards, something that I was contributing towards, despite the fact that I'd gotten everything on the German tech tree, or the German progression line, however you want to put it. So this is a major thing we could benefit from. That's the key problem. I'm sure there's many other ones you want to raise, and what I would do also is I will link my 2 articles I put on the Enlisted forum discussing my ideas, which I've built upon in 2 different posts and suggestions. I'll link them both for all those who are curious. But I do want to discuss it because I think it would be the biggest fix and not the heaviest fix required that requires loads of new content. I first want to structure this and state why it basically needs nothing majorly substantive and why this differs from Heroes and Generals, just because I want to counter a bit of criticism on this front about how people say the devs don't do anything, and so they will look to basically get the low-hanging fruit, so to speak. So in Heroes and Generals I could maybe list about 10 maps, maybe less, I honestly can't remember, which meant that when discussing front lines and so on and so forth in the RTS mode, there's a fundamental lack of content. So when you were fighting on the Eastern Front and it was freezing and it was meant to be snowy, it was still the same map as you were fighting on D-Day. And so there's a fundamental lack of content to suggest and replicate the front line in which you were fighting in, which was a problem. And so I always said in chat whenever I discussed with my friends when I was playing Heroes and Generals that we were lacking content fundamentally to uphold the base of the RTS mode. It doesn't feel very it's not a real-time strategy game if the real-time battle which you're fighting does not replicate the battle you're in. So that was a problem. In Heroes and Generals though, we were stuck with those maps, and in Enlisted I pretty much could reckon that every front line which you could fight on is covered. So if you would fight on the Eastern Front, you've got Eastern Front maps. If you fight on the Western Front, D-Day, Normandy, etc., you've got those maps covered too. If you fight in North Africa, you've got those maps. So by and large, all of the content you need has been covered. So there isn't a whole lot for the dev team to add apart from this overlay in which the RTS mode can occur. That's criticism one out the way. I don't think it's a massive thing to implement. Maybe just, speak to an RTS game and they can do it for you. I don't know. The first thing to address is, how would it work? How would you generate units? How would the game overall fit within an RTS mode? Well, Heroes and Generals provides a really good framework for that. So how you firstly unlocked the ability to create units corresponding to the RTS mode, which would be you hit a certain rank. I think in the German faction you would hit Oberlieutenant, and if you're in the American faction you would be hitting a different rank. I never played Germany, I don't know, but basically you would hit, maybe after playing the game for 30 or 40 hours, you would be able to create these units on the RTS mode. This would basically mean that new players were not just participating in a mode which didn't understand because they were so new. Of course, you could pay money to unlock a certain rank to get there, but it's quite expensive. I don't know anybody who actually did that. So after unlocking said troops, you would deploy them. So where would you deploy them? This is also a great framework which H&G gives us. Essentially, every faction would start in a country. So in H&G, Germany would start in Italy because usually Germany was a contested area which all the factions would fight over. Russia would start in Russia, and America would start in Great Britain. People would then spawn their units in the capital city, and the factions would fight over between 6 and 9 capital cities, and the faction which had the most by the end of the war, or which were the last one standing. But if they captured, I think, 9 cities, they would basically win the war, which I think is a really, really interesting, a really interesting mode. This grand mode would overlay, as I referenced earlier, onto a real-time map. So then if you had a battle occurring in Moscow, it would be in Moscow. If you had it in D-Day, it would be a D-Day map, and so on and so forth. So speaking more to the intricacies of the mechanics of the RTS mode, you had resources which limited the capabilities of your faction. So when a faction started, they would have resources, and as a battle went on and on, you would deplete resources, and you'd have to basically be dependent upon the competency of your generals to rearm you. The rearming would require people moving resources to the front line, which then soldiers could use in a real-time battle. So, for example, there were times when I was really well equipped and I could use APCs and jeeps and vehicles and motorcycles really well and really easily. But there were equally times when a general was not using their brain and they sent us in without any equipment, and we had to make do with what we had. And sometimes I won battles because of my own skill, and sometimes I lost battles because I was overrun by them having heavy tanks, and we had no tanks and no way to counter those tanks, so we lost that battle. What I want to talk about next is what you can do with those units. So you spawn a unit on the map. Okay, cool. What do they do? I feel this is where we can really build upon a Heroes and Generals mechanic. So the only thing your unit could really do was attack a front line. And that is basically because Heroes and Generals did not have the mechanics to support other modes in a game. We didn't have destruction mode, you didn't have invasion, you basically had one kind of mode, which was a conquest mode, where you would push front and push back these points. It would be a sort of like a dynamic conquest. I think we have a similar mode in Enlisted, but my point being there are lots more modes to occur in in Enlisted, basically. So I think you should be able to give your units orders to do something which will affect the outcome of the war in that specific region. So, for example, if you said, no, I don't just want to capture the area, I want to cause a bit of, I want to do a bit of scorch earth. So you might, instead of just saying, I want to do like an invasion mode, you want to do a destruction mode which will blow things up. Equally, for example, if you're retreating or you're on the retreat, you could say, how do you want to respond? And maybe you could say, I want to do a destruction thing to blow things up, so that when they attack, maybe it's not as quick as them to attack. So there's a macro strategy towards what they can do. It means it gives a bit of tactical elements towards how you want to approach a front line. You can say, I just want to do a straight up invasion, which might be more costly, or you can say, I want to do X, Y, Z. So I just want to say that you can basically apply the modes of Enlisted by connecting your strategic decision with actual in-game consequence. I think that's a really interesting way to differentiate the system and make it a bit more dynamic as well. A key difference that Enlisted and Hero Generals had was the fact that H&G did not have a battle rating system, which basically means that when you spawned in, you would, I think, if I can recall correctly, H&G had this system where you'd have a variety of soldiers you could deploy, and they would have a different gear setup, and so you wouldn't really have this difference in battle rating, so to speak. Whereas in Enlisted, as we all know, we do have a battle rating system. The way I think we could see it's properly accounted for in the RTS mode is incorporating the battle rating system into the veterancy of units you can raise. So what do I mean by that? So let's break that down. So when you progress as a soldier in the tech tree, you will unlock Rifleman 1, 2, 3 and 4. And I equally think we could apply that to the kind of unit you can raise as a general or a soldier able to raise a unit in the RTS mode. So say you've only unlocked Rifleman 1, this will correspond to having someone in game who can use it as a battle rating 1 or battle rating 2 loadout. So equally, if you conscript a Rifleman 2, it will be BR3, BR4, and Rifleman 3, 4 and 5. So this means that when you join a match, you will have to ensure you have basically quite a diverse range of squads available in case you do not have a BR5 squad to be used. And I think it's a very interesting mechanic, because it replicates what a real-time war is like. Picture this, you're in a war, the American army has been completely encircled in Paris, and that has basically killed off all of the veteran units. What are the Americans therefore forced to do? They are forced to conscript a whole bunch of basically militia that are basically Rifleman 1. They're still forced to fight battles, but they haven't got any training. So what would they be? They would be a BR1, BR2 unit, and it might also mean that maybe America's got good tanks still. I don't know. But it means that when you fight a battle, you are limited by the resource constraints of your nation. So again, picture Germany 1945. They are conscripting Volkssturm units because there's no one left to fight the war, and that would be like a Rifleman 1 squad. And so it creates this very dynamic system where if you've got an amazing commander who can put troops in the right place, but equally if you are encircled, it doesn't stop you from playing the game. It just means that the failure of your commanders will have real life impacts on you, which I think is a really fascinating and dynamic system. But equally, if you start with like a Rifleman 1, because The benefit of obviously raising militia, if you know from any game, is that it's quicker, they're cheaper, but if they survive a battle and do quite well, they might progress to rifleman too. So there's a benefit of doing that, but I think it's a very applicable mechanic that we can adapt and use in Enlisted. I quickly want to jump back to a criticism people might have, which is a similar criticism people had pre-merge in Enlisted when we had separate campaigns. The fact that this might divide the player base. Now, HMG provides also quite a good framework for this, in that with the two modes, you had sort of a casual mode and you had the war mode, the RTS mode, which was a bit more competitive. So I think it'd actually be a good addition to the game, because if you were to have a more casual mode, as you would if you were to implement this, then new players would have an environment which they could better get to know the game. It would be more against bots, so it'd be a quieter mode. But I also came back to be using that mode when, for example, I wanted to warm up before going into war mode. It was a nice entrance platform, and then when a player who felt confident enough to give war mode a go, they could give it a go, or they could just stay in the casual mode for as long as they liked. It might divide some players, but I also think there's sort of like a silver lining, which is that it would provide a useful entry platform for new players. There's been so many times where when I was playing BR1 and BR2 when I was a new player, I was getting absolutely farmed by people who are marshals, basically smurfing. And I'm like, well, if I'm a new player and actually really like the game, would I keep playing it? And you'd probably say no, because they've got, maybe BR1, BR2 weapons, but they've got the skill of a BR5 player, but otherwise a kit of a BR5 player. And so it's fundamentally unfair, whereas, they could be satisfied otherwise by going to a more competitive mode like the RTS mode, which would allow them to better grind something, experience something, have their actions have actual meaning, Now, to finally finish this off and sell this idea, I think there could be some really cool benefits towards doing it. I think naturally there could be an XP boost if you win the war. There could be unique cosmetics if you partake in a certain war. There could be time-limited events which are applicable to the war mode. So naturally, I think there are many things which could be used to sell the mode and give the mode applicability to those playing it, apart from just playing it for a general sense of purpose and something more to do in the game. But that's sort of what I mean, in that when you come to the end of a tech tree, why do you play it? I actually discussed on the forum with people, and they're saying, well, I play to get silver for leak crates. I play to, I don't know, because I enjoy the things I grinded. But it's like, well, a part of the game is grinding. And if the grind is done, and the events aren't good, and what the game has left to offer also isn't good, why play it? So I think, for what it's worth, this this mode would fundamentally be of benefit to the game. It would bring back a lot of people who otherwise are bored. I mean, I'm currently grinding in Japan, and once that's done, I might also get bored, because I don't see myself grinding, other factions. I don't really enjoy the other faction trees. But it would fundamentally bring a new sort of life to Enlisted. The only thing I can see, and I built upon this in my two articles, or my two suggestions on the forum rather, is that we have two next steps which I think need to be done, maybe three. The first one obviously is that it needs to be some sort of consultation on how to implement this mode to it, how to get the overlay, how to make it like Hearts of Iron 4, I'll put some images on the game so you can see what I'm talking about, how it might be hard to implement that, but I think once it's done, it'll be really good. But I think secondly is what people have touched on a lot, is that the factions are very limiting. So sub-factions, many YouTubers have covered this, but that's something else which would really support this concept further. But also new maps, because whilst it does have really good coverage, we are missing a lot of maps. But otherwise, I hope you really enjoyed this video. It's been an idea I've long thought about, long discussed. And if it's something you'd also like to see implemented, give me a comment, give me a like, and I will see you guys in the next one.